Welcome to this edition of AACRAO's Credential Chats. Really excited this week to be joined by AACRAO's very own Brad Pitt of verifiable and trusted credentialing, Mark McConaughey. Thank you so much for being with us, Mark.
You bet, my pleasure. And it is my pleasure to be with the icon of digital credentials, Mr. Noah Grayson.
Uh, this is the first. You got me stumbling here, Mark, and turning fire truck red. Really excited to have you on this week. Last week we had an opportunity to speak with AACRAO Executive Director Melanie Gottlieb, and she shared, just why this is so important and why, AACRAO is showing up in the spaces of innovative credentialing. And so I was really excited we get to have you on this week to kind of follow that up with hearing what does that look like for AACRAO to be involved. And so was kind of hoping that you could share some of what AACRAO is strategically doing to be involved and lead in this space, and then also get a sneak preview of some of our upcoming professional learning modules.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And really, I'm pretty excited and actually been working with you some too, Noah, just all about digital credentials. As you know, one of the things I love to point back to is that, you know, from higher education's perspective, we have not changed the transcript since the late 1800s, the 19th century. Man, it's the same old chronological record. It's always been. And you think about the inventions of the last 100 years or so, and probably the dry erase board is the most remarkable. Just let
I
that
see
sink.
what you did there. I see what you did there.
But in all honesty, all of a sudden we have come along at the beginning of our current century, and we have the digital platforms to do a lot better for our learners. And basically, I think that's what Melanie was talking about last week. What can we do? And of course, I'm going to talk about a couple of things here. First is I'm going to talk about the broad brush, which is learning mobility. After that, what kind of individual initiatives is AACRAO taking in order to support the whole idea of learning mobility and the improvement of the kind of records we can assert on behalf of our students? And they include something we call Accelerate, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. A technical advisory committee, really tuned in to the kind of technical questions that we need to ask in order to support these new types of records. Something called Infuse, something called interstate credential viability, and last but not least, what are we going to do in terms of education and awareness programs? So let me dive right in. Learning mobility. We want to do what is best for the learners in higher education. And what that really means is think about what do they do? What is it that we impart to them as they travel through their educational journey? It is really learning outcomes, skills, and competencies. But do we capture those? No, but we can now. And we need to think about how they might take that learning not only to another institution of higher education, but in any venue or ecosystem in which these kinds of asserted learning might be of their value. And we really want to do two things. One, we want to empower them. We want to enable them to say, this is what I've learned as part of my educational program. That's number one. Number two, when we can, we want to say, not only can we empower the learner to talk about it and articulate it, we can stand behind it as a verifiable credential, and we can assert it on their behalf. I won't want to get into it, but with the idea of self-sovereignty, not only can we assert it on their behalf, we can give it to them so they can assert it and put it to their best use for the opportunity that's best for them. So that's the big picture. That's what we're trying to do. Right, Noah? You're with me?
I am with you, and I just think that that's, briefly in every single one of these credentials chats at the conferences that we're all going to, we're just hearing everybody talk about, for all the big, shiny, awesome technology and all, what this is about like centering our learners and doing what's best for our learners. And so I really appreciate you kind of leading with that and, helping us think about how might, innovative learning records be something that's empowering our learners and adding value to the credentials that we're issuing. So thanks for letting me just interject there. But yes, I am
Yeah,
with you.
completely there. And so now what are we doing? Here are some of very specific things that AACRAO is doing in order to enable all the members of the association, all of the institutions who are part of this piece or who want to be a part of it. What can we do to help with that? Well, of course, as much as we represent registrars and admissions officers in our AACRAO space, we recognize wholeheartedly that we're not the only doers and shakers that make something like this happen. We recognize that it takes faculty, it takes people in student life, it takes our IT partners, it takes several members of the village that makes up an institution of higher education in order to make this happen. And actually, our distinguished colleague, Mike Simmons, has put together a project that he calls Accelerate. And the whole idea is to take the whole knowledge, the whole idea of innovative credentials, and not only talk about it from our perspective, the record-keeping perspective, from the admissions perspective, but from a holistic view of the institution. And who does that include? Well, it includes, I already mentioned a few, but what can we do as an association? We can talk to the association of those other professionals to sort of build the set of resources and the kind of basically information that our members need from all of these associations, what they might need in order to get going. And I'm going to rattle this off, but just to give you an idea of scope. ACE, AACNU, of course, AACRAO, AIR, CBEN, the competency-based network people, One EdTech, the data standards people, EDUCAUSE, the IT people, NACE, the framework people, the learning framework people. All of these people are involved. As a matter of fact, we had a meeting just this last week trying to get our heads around what kind of things we need to do in order to collaborate and what sets of deliverables we might be able to offer our members. So, and I apologize, no, I don't really have time to set the base for all these. I'm assuming a certain amount of knowledge of everyone, but I recognize I got to keep going. In 15 minutes, I can't cover it. So I'm going to move right along. The next thing that, and I give Melanie all the credit in the world, in order to basically support the kind of innovative credentialing that we've discussed and that you've discussed in your previous engagements online, are, man, what are the technical gaps? What kind of platforms do we have? And what are the gaps between our institutions and the ability to sort of assert these and issue these on behalf of students? So what we've planned is a technical advisory committee. And this advisory committee will bring together both experts in the field, outside folks as well. And there's a general call. As a matter of fact, if you look in, gosh, Paige, what's the newsletter that just went out? I think the call is already in there for serving on this committee. And what it will do, one of its first orders of business, is to do a nationwide survey to try and determine, okay, just exactly what do we use and where's the gap? What is it that we need in order to start supporting these kinds of initiatives and credentials? So I just want you to know that that's going. We're taking positive steps towards moving in the right direction.
And we'll also post a link in the digital credentials exchange on the AACRAO online community for that, for people who are interested in getting involved professionally. And I think that probably for some registrars and enrollment management professionals, Mark, like people probably just breathed a little bit of a sigh of relief that, okay, things are moving very quickly here. Are we about to, make decisions that aren't going to stay made?
That's right.
Are we gonna tell our learners that we're making these awesome highlight reels about who they are as learners and achievers and then put them on a laser disc and nobody has a
That's
laser disc player?
that's
And
exactly right.
so I think that, that anybody watching this, hopefully from the AACRAO community, is, breathe a little bit of sigh of relief that, one of the ways that you and AACRAO are leading is through this technical advisory group to make sure that we're going about things with a full sense of understanding of technologically what it means and what needs to happen.
Right. And next, and actually that's such a perfect segue. One of the next things is a project we call Infuse. And the whole idea here is basically to address the concern that you just had in addition to this technical infrastructure piece. Well, what is it that lies? What are the chief challenges? How do we create at scale an ecosystem, a public ecosystem in which everyone can participate, in which we create a layer that allow our vendors to add value-added features and to monetize them. But we want an easy pathway into an ecosystem that enables us to participate in this skills-based and innovative credentials-based world. And so what does that mean? Well, what we have in mind is that what will go is for willing participants, primarily alumni, we will take their old transcripts. Well, of course, they're not old depending on where you look at them, but we're going to take their transcripts and convert them through a universal translator into structured language. And that means one of the known open standards that accommodate innovative digital credentials. Open badges is probably the most common and the one that might resonate with most people, but it'll come in and translate it into that structured language and then put it somewhere, a public good wallet. So in essence, then it's staged for doing all kinds of things. One, we've created scale. Two, we can do some value adds for the benefit of the learner. For example, we can use AI at that point to go back in and infer what their competencies might be as a result of the program in which they were enrolled. So it really has some real possibilities there. Will that be validated yet? So I don't want people to get concerned. The answer to that is no. But for the benefit of the learner, it's absolutely terrific. The other great thing about that is absolutely we begin to learn what it takes to operate that at scale. We have to come up with a business model to sustain it overall. And by doing it at scale, it gives us the grounds through which to analyze those things. Real quickly, in a related one, we're also looking at interstate credential viability. In other words, how does it interoperate across straight lines? Straight lines. State lines is what I mean. And we're working with two states, Alabama and Tennessee. And we're basically saying, here's a wallet over here in Tennessee, here's one in Alabama. Can we, in fact, trade them in two different ways? Can we basically ingest the digital information? And number two, can we make sense of that information in the world such that they can make active and useful, oh gosh, I'm going to say it again twice, useful use, and they can use it productively in order to pursue their opportunities. So that's all good. And last but not least, we recognize that for many, particularly our membership, a lot of these concepts are new. And so we've embarked upon building a whole set of online courses, basically a whole curriculum, or at least we hope it'll be a whole curriculum once we fill it out. And we're going to have our first one here by about the 15th of April. And that's basically 101, Digital Credentials 101, a brief survey course of all things digital credentials from the point of view of registrars and admissions officers from our perspective. So that's the idea, introduce the concepts and all of the things that might happen in between. Then we'll have a whole set of courses underneath that to try and dive down into the details. And although it's subject to some change yet, here's where we're headed. One of the first ones we'll put together is a deep dive into micro-credentials, comprehensive learner records, otherwise known as CLRs, and learner and employment records, LERs. Sean Murphy, I'll quote him, he always likes to say, how do you spell LER? Well, this deep dive is really about how do you spell CLR and how do you spell LER. Next, frameworks, governance, policy, and practice. We care about integrity. We want to assert these that have value. Happens on two fronts. One is the faculty or whoever is the chief administrator of this work has to achieve a structure in which what we're learning, the learning that's being asserted has value. That's number one. And number two, we have to ensure that the records maintained associated with that learning is valid. And that's what registrars do. So this is all about policy and practice associated with that kind of record keeping and what kind of governance you use in order to assert both curricular and co-curricular types of learning. And last but not least, what administrative barriers might you encounter as you embark upon an initiative like this? Things like,
Well, Mark, I know you just like hit us with just a fire hydrant of all the things that AACRAO is doing with and for the AACRAO community. And, I hope that our members are also taking, a little bit of relief from knowing, okay, AACRAO is leading on this. This is not going to be left up to, us just at our institution to figure it out. And also I think with that last piece you mentioned about these courses that you're going to be rolling out here starting next month is, like our own data from the Credential Confusion Report, revealed that there's confusion. And
right,
so knowing that not only, is there good professional learning, but it's professional learning by AACRAO for AACRAO members, framing this stuff, for AACRAO people, I think is hopefully going to be something that's a huge sigh of relief and lowers the temperature for people who might be getting bothered. But I can't thank you enough for taking the time on your Monday afternoon to join the Credentials Chats and to share this with us. And just Mark McConaughey, thank you so much.
yeah, thanks, Noah. It's just a pleasure.
Have a good afternoon.